to pop in to give us his analysis and his take on this. In the next segment, we're going to get David Knight and the crew to pop in, but pop in whenever you like, David. Roger, what do you make of this whole situation? And then we'll talk some about President Kushner.
Well, Alex, as you said, I think it's exceedingly complex, and I think it has to be viewed on several levels. First, let's look at it just from a political point of view. This has one immediate and obvious effect. The idea that Donald Trump is soft on the Russians because of collusion between his campaign and the Russians is now blown to smithereens. If he's soft on the Russians, why is he bombing their closest ally and the regime that they are propping up?
Well, let's be clear. A base with Russians on it, 2 hours notice to get off of it.
Exactly. So it has probably that beneficial effect with the electorate. I noticed this morning reporters I speak to far less interested in the whole phony question of Russian collusion. Interesting. Secondarily, I do think that it was important for the president to project power, to project strength, and he probably doing nothing was probably not an option.
I was about to say, just looking at the optics, they would have used this to crucify him. So I want to have lower taxes. I want to have a controlled border. I want to have sovereignty. And I get Rand Paul's right about what he's saying, but this would have destroyed Trump. So it's a very weird place to be.
Well, and it will be the right move if it remains limited. The real danger, as you pointed out, is now adapting an interventionist neocon foreign policy, boots on the ground in a full war in Syria. There's just nothing here that is worth our fighting for. I understand that children are being gassed, although I understand even General Mattis has raised questions about whether that was fraudulent. What's interesting to me is this push by the generals, which I believe is aided by the president's son-in-law, to essentially shed the non-interventionist position that he stuck to very closely in the campaign and become George W. Bush. The people, if they wanted a neocon, they would have elected Jeb. The American people are tired of endless foreign wars where our national interests are not obvious. In the case of Assad, he is propped up by the Russians. He's financing Hamas and Hezbollah. And on the other side, you have ISIS. So the only people cheering today, sadly, are neocons and jihadis.
Absolutely. You have Al-Qaeda, ISIS, Al-Nusra tweeting support for Trump doing this. You have the Weekly Standard, a bunch of disgraced chicken hawks supporting it. And now the liberals are turning, almost all of them. And the Washington Post is like, how dare you do this? After they say, oh, you're aiding the dictator Assad. Then he does this, and now they're turning against him. And I see everything going on in the White House to turn off his base, the bad health care bill. And then Kushner runs off.
I think as we exposed yesterday, this isn't Trump's health care bill. This is John Boehner's health care bill. This was drafted by the lobbyist, former Speaker John Boehner, when he put a cigarette down long enough, passed to Paul Ryan, from Ryan to Reince Priebus, from Priebus to the president. They could have had a much better bill. I was really happy to see that the president followed some very sound advice and sat down with Senator Rand Paul to start figuring out where they agree and where we can get a more market-oriented health care proposal.
And Paul said he believes they can get it. So that's a big positive move. Trump's pushing the tax cuts. That's very positive. But let's pull back. We don't want to attack Kushner. I mean, I hope the guy's a great guy, but he's a Democrat. He keeps bringing in these people. He's pushing for a lot of things. Let's talk about the role of President Kushner here, because they keep saying Bannon's the brain, but now we know what you reported on Monday is now confirmed that indeed he is the leaker to the media to go after his political enemies that are hardcore conservatives and patriots like Bannon. And we see Bannon now more and more being forced out because I guess he didn't support this current military move that we've seen. So let's talk about President Kushner.
Yeah, I can absolutely certify that Steve Bannon was opposed to this intervention in Syria, and he obviously lost an internal argument. I also think he is wearing the manner in which the travel ban was rolled out. He's most certainly wearing the health care fiasco, where we were forcing Republicans to walk the plank on a bill that wasn't even ours. All of those things, I think, are being utilized by President Kushner to, to put the heat on Steve Bannon. Bannon's a fighter, and I do think he will survive. But what we have to figure out is whether his role is diminished. One obvious problem, of course, is that he really has not spent any capital to bring other nationalists who supported Trump into the White House.
Sure, it looks like he's got a jihad going against true populists and patriots. I mean, I'm sorry, he's the one in there rooting everybody out, running them out, and then trying to get the neocons, back in the tent.
And meanwhile, unfortunately, Steve Bannon has not gone to bat for other nationalists, and therefore he finds himself on the White House staff largely without allies.
And you said that day one, before he was in, he said he's got a battle. He's been lulled into a sense of trust. And I talked to him some early on, and I was just like, you've got to get more patriots in there. But of course, people weren't looking to give power back to the people like Trump. They were looking for their own power. And so Bannon wasn't looking for his own power, and so now he's going to lose it. So there's that paradox. We don't want power, but we've got to be willing to get in there and keep them from getting power so that we can give it back to the people.
My greatest concern, in all honesty, Alex, is that watching the Silicon Valley barons whining and dining Jared and Ivanka, the Google people, the Facebook people, those who are seeking to choke InfoWars and Stone Cold Truth and Breitbart News and Daily Caller and all the other...
That's right. While the very support system of the Republic is under admitted Democratic Party, George Soros, David Brock admitted they say they want to shut down, admitted they want to end free speech, admitted they're trying to police China by showing them they can censor here. Outrageous. And Trump is on autopilot while Obama's stay-behind network, Ministry of Truth at the State Department openly testifies in Congress that we're Russian agents and that we should be shut up. I mean, this exactly. And remember, day one, when Obama signed that bill, I said, this is going to be our biggest bane, Roger. I mean, I'm not bragging, but did I not tell you we've got to tell Trump, we've got to hammer him on this?
I remember that day. You told me, well, this is the National Censorship Board. Here it is. And that's exactly what has transpired. My point, of course, is if there's anyone on the face of the planet who should understand this, it would be Steve Bannon, because he comes out of Breitbart News. I don't think that Jared understands that if these censorship initiatives go forward, the chances of the president's reelection are zero. Zero.
Kushner?
We are going to restore the mainstream media monopoly on the dissemination of political information. Trump could not have won without a free and vibrant net. Trump could not have won without Infowars.com. Trump could not have won without Breitbart, Daily Caller.
And the enemy knows that. The enemy knows that. Others. They've written thousands and thousands of articles admitting, and then you get leaks where they're saying, oh, we got... Roger Stone banned off TV. Oh, we cut out the MVP. Soros give us more money. I mean, they are literally trying to destroy us, and Trump's on autopilot. Let's just say it. Toad Hall is filled with a bunch of weasels and stoats, and it's time to retake it, man. He needs to understand he is surrounded by weak, foppish, left-wing New York socialites.
And meanwhile, we see, Jared dining with the head of Google at one of the toniest restaurants in Manhattan. This is more disturbing to me than anything else, because the future of the Trump administration and his efforts to make America great again completely pivot off access to the net and the ability to rally the same people who elected him. If we can't reach those people, we cannot rally them. This is the greatest single danger I see moving forward, but there's no evidence that Jared Kushner understands what is going on here.
It's unbelievable. And, here we are trying to stop wars. Here we are just trying to get taxes cut. And we have the vicious piranha-like brainwashed left, people that are susceptible to the brainwashing, not realizing we're their best friends. And that weirdo foreign Nazi collaborators are financing the end of free speech, who overthrew the Middle East, who overthrew Ukraine. I mean, they mean business. People ask why they never give up and why they're so wicked, and because they just keep winning. And finally, they run into us, and we're holding them back, only to see, as usual, Trump infiltrated by his very family. You know, do you think Kushner is just delusional, or does he realize what he's doing? Because they're going to destroy him, too.
Well, I don't think that, ironically, I don't think his motives are bad. I just think his political judgment is not sound. He would like his father-in-law to be successful. He would like his father-in-law to be popular. He would like his father-in-law to be well received in the, the salons of the Upper West Side of New York. That is never going to happen. His father was elected as a revolutionary, as a reformer, as an outsider.
And can't Jared see the global tide is inexorable and cannot be stopped, even if they capture our leaders? More like shark teeth will roll forward.
Do you think he dines with anybody who isn't a millionaire? Do you think he dines with anybody who isn't a globalist?
You know, Roger, when you're talking about...
Besides the folks at Goldman Sachs?
Yes.
Skip this one more break. I can't help it. Do it.
You're talking, Roger, about who he dines with, talking about him dining with Silicon Valley and so forth. Lee Stranahan of Breitbart talked about how he met with Goldman Sachs CEO Lloyd Blankfeld at in D.C. for dinner, and shortly after that, we saw this massive change, as they're talking about in other publications, this Game of Thrones that we see happening at the White House. And it's not just this particular action that we saw Donald Trump turn around in just 48 hours, but of course it's also the Obamacare issue. It's also even climate change. We didn't even talk about that, how they pushed, as Donald Trump was putting in the executive orders to shut down the EPA overreach, to shut down entire industries. It was Jared Kushner and Ivanka who were pushing back to say, don't mention the Paris climate treaty.
Exactly, it's them. It's them. It's his daughter and his son-in-law. They are literally the enemies of the Republic. I just can't help it. I'm sorry, I'll just lay it all out.
They are elitists. By the way, I think Lee Stranahan is one of the very best reporters in the country today and does excellent work there at Breitbart. I follow his byline very carefully, and I'm certain to read everything he writes. But I think Alex has put his hands on it. First of all, this, in a way, has to do with political correctness and social.
They want to be accepted. They don't want to be yelled at. And I think Ivanka's amazing. I think Kushner's really smart. And I like the sons, Donald Jr. and everybody. They're great. Hell, they follow us on Twitter and tweet our stuff. The point is, I don't want to be patted on the head. I want the Republic back. I want to restore the Republic.
For those who say, well, he's the president's son-in-law, and therefore, there's no way that he will lose power, I would remind you that Donald Trump is a man who fired his own brother. Watch the poll numbers. Because if we dive headlong into globalism, Donald Trump may be at a 40% approval rating today. It'll hit 20. That's not why we elected him.
And let me add this point.
Faith with our voters. Now, I'm not, hysterical today, and I'm not, really completely distraught, because at the end of the day, I have faith in Donald Trump to figure this out and right the ship. I'm convinced that when he hears the arguments about what Google is doing, what Facebook is doing, what these other Stalinist-type censors are doing on the net, he will get it instantly. But what we don't know is whether Steve Bannon has, made this clear to him what is afoot.
Everybody through Twitter, everywhere else. The weird thing is, talking to Trump, he does a lot of the talking, and then people are busy, and Reince Priebus is on the line or whatever. I don't want to get into it. They literally follow him around like hounds, trying to keep him away from people. But the public has to get the message that they're set up a censorship board, they're undercutting him. And I think, and again, when I say enemies of the Republic, I don't mean conscious enemies, but they literally are working against the restoration of this huge engine of success. Trump will be like George Washington 2.0 if he succeeds. If he doesn't, it'll be sad. And we just look at the delusional elite and all that they're pushing. Stay there, Roger. We've got like 5 more minutes left with you, but I want to get Kit Daniels to pop in. He's got a positive view on this. And also, we've got Matt in there, who's a smart producer. He's got some points at it. So go ahead, guys. Both of you jump in briefly.
Yes, Alex. The article, the subheadline of my article reads, "Strikes could trigger reconciliation coalition with Russia to stop ISIS." And that's true, because when it comes to the strikes, Trump just hit like an air base. He didn't even touch the runway. He did minimal damage to this air base. And going back to what I just said, marriage counselors will tell you that the greatest bond between couples is forged in the reconciliation phase. So now Trump and Russia now have this little standoff going off with the ships in the Mediterranean, yet he struck an air base with minimal damage, which is basically a slap on the wrist to Assad. and now he's in the position where he can use diplomacy to de-escalate the situation with Russia. Now, if he didn't strike the airbase before, and he tried to talk to Russia beforehand about forging a coalition to stop ISIS, then, you know, his whole administration, you know, the Democrats in Congress, even the neocons in Congress, would have went out and said that Trump is Putin's puppet.
I agree. I believe, and I said this yesterday before it was admitted, that there were back channels, that they are meeting with them, that Mattis and others are talking to them, that they told the Russians, let us do this. This will shut up that we're all Russian agents. Then we can have another deal to fully remove ISIS and then decide what we're going to do with Syria together. But we're going to hit this because the optics are too bad. You can saber rattle all you want, but then this will be a gambit to reopen Dayton. And I believe that's actually what's happened. But the neocons are all celebrating because they believe now they can just stage more false flags. I believe they're directly behind it. I think McCain went over there and set this up a month ago. They've done it before. And so they're now thinking they can bully the president into submission and aren't even sophisticated enough to know what the president's done. And by the way, I know that's what's been done. I mean, I just can see it. I saw it before it happened. Roger?
Well, he is, he's clever like a fox. I do agree with you, Alex, that John McCain, maybe he thinks he was elected president. I don't know. But he clearly was there at a suspicious time. And he and his mini-me, Lindsey Graham, are just itching for war. They're desperate for war. It's very sad. You would think John McCain, as a man who has seen war, would want to do everything necessary to avoid war. We're going to know very soon because if this becomes a full-fledged invasion of Syria, boots on the ground and massive, civilian bombings, then we have lost. Then we have lost the purposes of electing Donald Trump.
Well, Roger, here's the bad news. They admittedly are putting in I'm not going to even say the numbers, but I've got this from a lot of good sources, and then I looked at the news. They admitted tens of thousands of troops, as we speak, are being dumped into Syria from the U.S. military.
And that's the problem because we see all this stuff about a surgical strike.
And we have to assume that right now the generals and probably Jared Kushner are pushing the president in that direction. That's why I think it's vitally important that supporters remind the president why they voted for him.
That's right,
We
David.
did not vote for him so we could have a neocon interventionist foreign policy, and we have no vital interests on the ground in Syria. Of course we hate the gassing of children.
I agree with that. And I don't want to say something to you, Roger. I don't want to get into the cheerleading of surgical strikes. Every time we do something that is aggressive, that we do take an action without having this debated in Congress. And that's one of the reasons why we have Congress declare war, because it takes a process to debate this. We did not look at the forensic evidence. There's indications that this is a false flag, that this it was tweeted out, it was published.
There's a rush to judgment. It's just instant.
Exactly. Let's have a forensic investigation. When we did that 4 years ago, we found that wasn't true. So we see all these articles from Daily Mail. This was an awesome arsenal. This was pinpoint accuracy. We have Brian Williams saying this is beautiful missiles. You know what? If they were storing gas there at that place, then where's the pictures of the people dying when they hit the storehouse of the gas there at the airport? With the missiles, no,
it was empty. The Russians are involved. This was all done. This was all done behind the scene in back channels. And I hate to even say that, but listen, the mainstream media won't even pick up on that because they're just such repeaters. Yeah. They're so dumb they don't even know what they're witnessing. And guaranteed, that's it. I'm just saying, I don't even know if I like this because it's so Machiavelli. We're going to let Roger go. We're going to come back briefly with Kit. And also Matt jump in here, and then David Knight's going to take over. I've got a special report coming up at the bottom of the hour, and we've got so many guests today. Roger, in 30 seconds left, StoneColdTruth.com, your book, Making of a President, InfoWarsStore.com. 30-second final comment.
Well, let's watch this very, very carefully. And I urge patriots, I urge those who are listening to go ahead and contact the White House, the main number where you can leave a message, and they're set up for that, 202-456-1414. Tell the president, no wider war in Syria.
And tweet at him, and call in on C-SPAN. Exactly. Roger, we'll talk to you soon. Anytime you want to pop in today with more intel, thank you so much. GCN Live.